video participant.
Yes, I've handled that. Anyway, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is our final round of our Summer Open tournament. Congratulations to those of you who've made it to the finals here. Regardless of whether you emerge a champion or a finalist, I'm really glad that you're here. And I think it's going to be a fun round for all of you. Couple of random notes just to start us off with. The resolution is regardless of their incarceration status, Americans who have been convicted of any crime should retain their right to vote. We're going to do a coin flip in a moment to determine what side our debaters are debating on and what order they're going to speak in. The timing is standard ready, set, debate timing. So for those of you who are not familiar with that, 4 minutes for the constructives, 1 minute of shared prep time, 2 minutes for cross-examinations on each side, 2 minutes of shared prep time, 4 minutes for rebuttals on each side, 2 minutes of shared prep time, and then 3 minutes for summary speeches on each side. If there are no questions, I'm going to go to a coin flip here. Let's go to our lone wolf, Mr. Henry. I want to call heads or tails.
What
was that?
Heads.
Hey Siri, flip a coin.
It's heads this time.
That's heads. So what is your preference?
Can I go second?
Yes, you can go second. And Ryan and Eric, pro or con?
They would like to do con.
All right, Ryan and Eric would like to do con. So Ryan and Eric are going to speak on the con first, and we're going to speak on the pro second. With that, I've got 4 minutes on the clock for our first speech. I'm going to be your invisible timekeeper, so you'll just hear me speaking now and then, and looking forward to the debate. 4 minutes when you're ready.
All right. Judges ready. Opponents ready. I'll begin my time now. The moral integrity of the resolution can be achieved in non-extreme ways. My opponent's policy accomplishes extremely little, in the end making the very ones who they think their policy would help the ones who bear the costs. In this speech, I'll be proposing my counterplan and my arguments. Greetings, everyone. My name is Ryan Chang, and I'll be exhibiting the constructive for the resolution, regardless of their incarceration status or the crimes they have committed. Americans who have been convicted of any crime should retain the right to vote. This debate should be decided using the two worlds analysis framework, meaning that the side that presents a better or more prolific world should be the winner. This speech that I'm presenting is a counterplan of sorts, meaning that I will propose an idea that accomplishes the same ideals as the resolution, but is overall better policy in comparison. Please note that the resolution guidelines allow counterplans, and without further ado, let's begin. Contention 1, reasonability, subpoint A, serious offenders. The resolution policy simply states, quote, regardless of the crime. Regardless of their crimes, Essentially, we could be allowing those who have committed serious crimes to vote in order to establish a very thin sense of democracy. The sole purpose of a prison sentence in the first place is to show that breaking the law will result in a loss of freedoms and rights that democracy offers. Therefore, not all felons, regardless of their crime, should retain the right to vote. Subpoint B, constitutionality. The 8th Amendment of the Bill of Rights succinctly prohibits punishments for the crimes that are not proportioned to the offense. A sentence should not be overkill nor lenient, but granting re-enfranchisement for all felons, regardless of their crime, is simply way too lenient. Although it may sound good at first, being moral for the sake of being moral should not come at the cost of overruling amendments, making prose policy unconstitutional. Contention 2, GFV, graduated felon voting, also known as Con's counterplan. Subpoint A, benefits at the cost of lives. We as Con propose a counterplan where most felons are exempt from prison disenfranchisement. We have determined that those who have not committed crimes such as serious violent crimes, electoral fraud, and treason should not be disenfranchised. Those who have committed less or severe trivial crimes are not to have their voting rights taken away, as once again, a punishment should only be graduated towards the offense. The focal intention of such a policy is to bring justice as criminals who have finished their sentence. But some felons and their crimes are simply unredeemable. Therefore, our world is much more proportioned. Subpoint B, minimal dangers. Con's counterplan does not condone the effective immediate re-enfranchisement of all criminals, but rather we would like to offer them another chance at society. Without suffering the cost too much, Pro's proposed resolution is asking all criminals, regardless of their crime severity and costs. Allowing traitors and those who have altered democratic elections to vote again can only be detrimental and not beneficial, and this is just one example. Contention 3, counterplan impacts. Subpoint A, rehabilitation. Every felony is a serious breach of the bonds that unite our society. Rather than obligate the government to initiate the restoration process, it is reasonable to require felons to ask to have their rights restored. Also, felons should demonstrate rehabilitation by living crime-free during a waiting period after the completion of their sentences in order to prove that they are trustworthy. Subpoint B, probation and parole. Those who are on probation and parole have not yet completed their punishment. Before regaining rights or voting, they should prove that they are trustworthy by being crime-free for some time, just like my previous subpoint. And once again, immediate re-enfranchisement is inappropriate for every case. This is another impact of our counterplan, which clearly offers the same benefits for lesser costs. At the end of the day, former felons are still Americans, so they should be able to vote. However, Pro's policy is far too extreme, allowing all criminals regardless of their crimes. To recap, contention 1 talks about reasonability, contention 2 is GFB, our counterplan, and our third contention is about our impacts. I hope your vote for the con side is secured if not greatly considered, and thank you for listening.
All right, I have 4 minutes on the clock for our second team to deliver their constructive speech when you're ready.
Okay, judges ready? Opponents ready? I will begin my time now. Hi, my name is Henry, and today I'll be presenting the constructive for the pro side of the resolution. Regardless of their incarceration status, Americans who have been convinced of any crime should retain the right to vote. This debate should be judged using the two worlds framework, meaning that the side that presents the better world should be given the win. Contention 1 is flaws. Subpoint A, minor crimes. There are many people who are currently in prison for something as little as a parking ticket. Do you think it makes sense to take away something as big as voting rights from a person for such a small and minor offense? Clearly, it doesn't. According to prisonpolicy.com, nearly half, or 46% of people incarcerated in state prisons in 2015 were convicted of nonviolent crimes, such as drug, property, or public order crimes. For example, not being able to afford a parking ticket. According to the U.S. Constitution, voting is a right and a privilege. People shouldn't have such an important right taken away from them just because of such a minor and petty crime. That clearly shows how not allowing incarcerated individuals to vote is unjust, which is something that would not happen in Pro's world. Subpoint B is major crimes. On the other hand, people who are in prison for something serious, such as murder, make up only 3.2% of the total prison population. If Khan claims that these people have bad judgment, it's hardly enough to even make a difference in the election and will most likely not present any problems. So the big question is, why should we not allow prisoners to vote when only a minuscule percent of them might have bad judgment? That is something to think about. Subpoint C, unfairness. In society, we let previously incarcerated individuals marry, receive education, own property, and work. They don't lose their freedom of religion, their right against self-incrimination, and many other rights. We also have programs to help them get trained and educated to become a good citizen. But what the con side is saying is that even with all of these rights and freedoms given back to them, they still can't be trusted to help choose our leaders. If we thought criminals could never be reformed, then we wouldn't have let them out of prison in the first place. That shows just how flawed Khan's thinking actually is. Subpoint D, inequality. Statistically, lower income individuals will have a higher chance of being incarcerated, like the previously mentioned parking ticket scenario. If they're incarcerated and can't vote, they will further worsen the inequality problem since they will not have a voice in the election, while other higher income people will. Contention 2 is benefits of Pro's policy. Subpoint A, the common good. The fact that prisoners lose many freedoms does not mean that they should lose all of their civil rights. Denying prisoners the right to vote is likely to undermine respect for the rule of law. Allowing prisoners to vote, by contrast, may strengthen their social ties and commitment to the common good, thus promoting legally responsible participation in civil society. Subpoint B is better prisons. When an individual is incarcerated, they lose many of their basic and fundamental rights as a human being. For example, the right to freedom, free speech, and privacy, just to name a few. The right for freedom is arguably the most precious right for a human being. Losing their freedom is already enough of a punishment. If we give them the right to vote, then that would be the one thing that reminds them that they're still human. That could lead to better morals in prisons and give the prisoners one thing to look forward to. To recap, my contention 1 was costs, subpoint A being minor crimes, talking about how it doesn't make sense to take away something as big as voting rights from a person for such a small and minor offense. Subpoint B is major crimes, talking about how 3.2% of the total prison population is hardly enough to even make a difference in the election and will not present any problems. Subpoint C is unfairness, talking about how, with all of these rights and freedoms given back to the prisoners, they still can't be trusted to help choose their leaders. And subpoint D is inequality, talking about how the problem of inequality may worsen. And contention 2 is benefits of Pro's policy, subpoint A being the common good, talking about how allowing prisoners to vote may strengthen their social ties and commitment to the common good, thus promoting legally responsible participation in civil society. And subpoint B was better prisons, talking about how it could lead to better morals in prisons and to give the prisoners one thing to look forward to. So because of all of the above, that's why I strongly encourage a vote for pro. Thank you for your time.
All right, we're going to go into a period of prep time. I have 1 minute on the clock. Krish, did you have a question?
Yes, I just have one question from the judge's perspective. In previous debates, I was under the impression that counterplans are not allowed in a debate.
So
Are we
in
going to-
this, yeah, so in this tournament, they will be allowed. So just so you know.
Oh,
I'm going to create a breakout room as well for our competitors, Ryan and Eric. I'm going to put you in that breakout room and call you out right away. So I'm opening up those rooms now. All right, the 1 minute is beginning now. All right, prep time is up. We're going to go into our first cross-examination. I have 2 minutes on the clock when you're ready.
Judges ready? Opponents ready? I will begin now. So do you believe that those who have committed serious violent crimes, high crimes, election fraud, and treason should be voting? Yes or no?
Well, yes, of course, because look.
Well, why would you think so? People who have committed treason already proved that they are not to be trusted.
Okay, look, if you say that serious offenders can't be trusted and everybody who wants to vote and while incarcerated has to prove that they're trustworthy first, we can't prove that everybody who has voted is trustworthy, and we also can't prove that.
Treason is defined by an action to overthrow the government. So do you believe that these people should be putting their opinion into the government?
Okay, well, look.
Yes or no?
They are, well, yes, but here, let me explain. Even if they are allowed to vote, then it is most likely it's not going to be a couple million votes that would lead to a very bad result for the government. See, there aren't a couple thousand treason like every year. There will only be a couple.
So because you're mentioning a couple thousand votes, I'm assuming you mean yes. So do you believe that do you believe that our counter plan that allows most prisoners to vote refutes your entire constructive? Yes or no?
Could you please explain your counter plan again?
Our counter plan says that most felons are allowed to vote. So basically, every single prisoner is allowed to vote except for ones that commit serious violent crimes, high crimes, treason, and election fraud. Very reasonable. So do you think that your constructive addresses any issues with our counter plan? Yes or no?
So first, you're saying that people, they should be able to, like, they have to be first deemed trustworthy and then they can vote.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that everyone except people with specific crimes should be able to vote. I yield my time to the chair.
All right, I have 2 minutes on the clock for our next cross-examination, beginning when you're ready.
Okay, judge ready? Or judges? Opponents ready?
Yes.
I'll begin my time now. Do you think it is fair for someone to have their voting rights taken away just because of a small crime, such as a speeding ticket?
I don't agree. I think it's unfair.
Okay. After prisoners are released, they gain back many freedoms. They can work, get education, and etc. So why are you still holding their voting rights back?
Well, for most people, like 99%, I don't know the exact figures, but like for 99.9% of felons, they're allowed to vote, right? It's that simple. However, we withhold voting from people who commit treason because obviously they shouldn't be voting if they have already proven that they want to harm the government. If you want, if you wish, I can further explain.
Okay, never mind. Third question. If we went ahead with your policy, then the problem of inequality would worsen. How do you respond to that?
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, so if we went ahead with your policy, then the problem of how do you respond to that?
Can you explain? I don't see how the problem of inequality would
Oh,
worsen.
statistically, lower income individuals will have a higher chance of being incarcerated, more than 2 times likely than higher income individuals. So if they're incarcerated and they can't vote, then it will further worsen the inequality problem since they will not have a voice in the election while other people will.
We're not saying that they can't vote. We're saying that they can vote. I heard that you used the example of someone not being able to pay a speeding ticket. Am I correct?
Yeah.
So I'm saying like we're saying that those people can vote, right? So of course it's going to be more equal than the status quo. And when we say that those people can vote, I mean it achieves the same policy as yours. I believe that you said in your constructive how like how so I remember you saying in your constructive how yeah you pointed out the problem that there are some terrible people in prison, but you said that only a few very few that there are very few of them, correct?
Oh well, my time is up. Can I?
Okay.
So
All right, we're going to go into a period of prep time. I have 2 minutes on the clock. Ryan and Eric, I'll call you out of your breakout at the end of the first minute. Just wait till it kicks you out to the end of the second. Prep time is beginning now. All right, I'm going to close up the rooms. So you have 1 more minute left in prep time. All right. As soon as everybody's back here, we'll jump into, yep, that's everybody. We're going to jump into our first rebuttal. I have 4 minutes on the clock. Begin when you're ready.
First ready. Opponent ready. Is my opponent ready?
yeah.
I assume yes. Yes. So he responded with yes. Okay. I shall begin my rebuttal now. Greetings, everyone. My name is Eric Du, and today I'll be refuting my opponent's argument as a part of this rebuttal speech. Once again, this debate should be judged using the two worlds framework, meaning that whichever side provides the better world should be the victor of this debate. As for our constructive recap, our first contention talks about the reasonability, touching on serious offenders and the Constitution. Our second and third contentions talk about our proposed counterplan, looking at the benefits, the minimal dangers, and the rehabilitation of felons, and probation/parole guidelines. Now I'll begin my line by line. So this is my opponent's contention one. Contention one: flaws. Subpoint A: trivial and minor crimes. Subpoint B: major crimes. Subpoint C: unfairness, and subpoint D: equality. My opponent here has clearly failed to consider the fact that this would be covered in the con world. Our counterplan is simply those who have committed less severe or trivial crimes are not to have their voting rights taken away. As once again, a punishment should be graduated towards the offense. The focal intention of introducing such a policy is to bring justice to criminals who have finished their sentence, but some prisoners and their crimes are essentially just unredeemable. Subpoint B also mentions major crimes, another factor conveniently covered by a counterplan. Those who have committed horrific crimes should most certainly not be allowed to vote, though, like my opponent says, voting is a privilege, and those who have committed crimes that were not as severe as the one excluded in our scoping are not to have this and those who have committed crimes as severe as the ones excluded in our scoping are not to have this privilege. His third subpoint is about how unfair the con world is. However, I find it unfair that serious offenders such as murderers have the same equal rights as those who are 100% innocent. Not only is this unfair in our eyes, but it will potentially be unjust in the eyes of all voters. His last subpoint about equality is not a valid one, because once again we don't find it very equal that serious offending criminals are voting on the same grounds as one that has not. Contention 2: benefits of the pro. Subpoint A: the rule of the law, respect for the law. Subpoint B: better prisons. Now, my opponent's second contention is about the benefits of the pro, which I remind you are similar to our GFB counterplan, where the costs are much higher. My opponent's argument on fairness isn't exactly fair at all. My normal folk could be at the ballot box with murderers, and I don't think that registers as fair. Just to remind my opponent, America is a representative democracy. Everyone is equally represented, and we agree as much as you that felons should still be allowed a chance. However, some criminals and crimes that they have committed are just simply unacceptable for restoration. We have implemented the two worlds analysis throughout our debate, but to summarize, our counterplan allows most of the U.S. prison population to vote. However, serial killers and traitors should not be treated as equally as others. Would you want to be a murderer, a traitor, arsonist, a felon who has committed election fraud to decide the future of the United States? My opponent accuses us of being unconstitutional. However, the 14th Amendment states otherwise. The con has best met the judging criteria, and for these reasons, your ballot for the con is the right choice.
All right, I have 4 minutes on the clock for our second rebuttal when you're ready.
Okay, so let me set my timer. Judges ready. Opponents ready. I will begin my time now. Hi, my name is Henry, and today I'll be presenting the rebuttal for the pro side of the resolution. Regardless of their incarceration status, Americans who have been convicted of any crime should retain their right to vote. This debate should be judged using a true worlds analysis framework, meaning that the side that presents the better world should be awarded the win. I'll first recap my contentions, provide a line-by-line rebuttal, and finally explain some impacts. To recap, my first contention was costs, subpoint A being minor crimes, talking about how it doesn't make sense to take away something as big as voting rights from a person for such a small and minor offense. Subpoint B was major crimes, talking about how 3.2% of the total prison population is hardly enough to even make a difference in the election and will not present any problems. Subpoint C was unfairness, talking about how with all of these rights and freedoms given back to their prisoners, they still can't be trusted to help choose their leaders. And subpoint D is inequality, talking about how the problem of inequality would worsen. Contention 2 was the benefits of pro's policy, subpoint A being the common good, talking about how allowing prisoners to vote would strengthen their social ties and commitment to the common good, thus promoting legally responsible participation in civil society. And subpoint B was better prisons, talking about how it could lead to better morals in prisons and to give their prisoners one thing to look forward to. So now I will begin my line-by-line rebuttal. So my opponent's contention one was reasonable, subpoint A was serious offenders, and subpoint B was constitutionality. But once again, nearly half of people incarcerated in state prisons in 2015 were convicted of nonviolent drug, property, or public order crimes. That doesn't necessarily mean that they have bad judgment. But if we take a closer look at this argument, we can see that it does have many flaws. We can't say that everyone who can and has voted has a good judgment. You don't have any evidence for that. In addition, you also can't prove that incarcerated individuals made a bad judgment on every single thing in their life. This proves how this argument is extremely weak and can easily be rebutted. So for the rest of the case, my opponent talks about their counter plan and the impacts of their counter plan. But see, your proposed counter plan is almost the same as proposed policy, but like you don't allow the very serious crimes to vote and allow the other 99% of incarcerated individuals to vote. You talk about serious crimes like treason, but how many people actually try to commit treason every year? You did not provide any numbers or percentages. I'm sure that the number is almost non-existent. So what that means is that basically Khan's counterplan is identical to Pro's policy, since it agrees with 99.99% of Pro's policy. So that would refute my opponent's contention 2 and contention 3. Now I would weigh my impacts. In Khan's world, we have people who are currently in prison for something as little as a parking ticket. According to prisonpolicy.com, nearly half of people incarcerated in state prisons were convicted of nonviolent drug, property, or public order crimes. That clearly shows how not allowing incarcerated individuals to vote is unjust and forces people who are in prison for minor offenses to have their voting rights taken away from them. Plus, in society, we let previously incarcerated individuals marry, own property, and work. They don't lose their freedom of religion, their right against self-incrimination, and many other rights. But what the con side is saying is that even with all of these rights and freedoms given back to the prisoners, they still can't be trusted to help choose our leaders. If we thought criminals could never be reformed, then we wouldn't have let them out of prison in the first place. Plus, statistically lower income individuals will have a higher chance of being incarcerated, like the previously mentioned parking ticket scenario. If they're incarcerated and can't vote, then it will further worsen the inequality problem since we will not have a voice in the election while other higher income people will. So, because of all of the above, that is why I strongly encourage a vote for the pro side of the resolution. Thank you for your time.
All right, we're going to go into a period of prep time now. Same deal as before. It's 2 minutes. Eric and Ryan, I'll call you out after the first minute. All right, we're coming back, waiting for everybody to come back on. I think we're just waiting for Krish. Oh, there we go. All right, I've got 3 minutes on the clock for our first summary, beginning when you're ready.
All right, judges ready? Opponents ready? All right, I'll begin my con summary now. Morning, everyone. I'm Ryan Cheng, and I'll be finishing off today's debate with a summary of my own and hopefully a vote from you. Before I continue on with the summary speech, I would like to review a few things, including my framework. My framework is two worlds, and so is my opponent's. We both agree on this, but the problem here is that my opponent has not proven at all that his world would be better than Khan's. Now, I would like to take a brief moment to explain to all of the judges why and how Khan has a stronger case in contrast to the opponents. For starters, our counter plan quite frankly solves much of the ideals of my opponent's policy, all the while bearing less costs. And my opponent accuses our counter plan of being almost identical to the resolution. But there is one difference. Ours works, because ours will still create a functional society without the murderers at the ballot box. Moreover, my opponent contradicts himself by stating that voting is a privilege, and then proceeds to theorize that giving this privilege to serious offenders makes a better world. I don't think that makes much sense. Now, let's go into our voters. Voter 1, ladies and gentlemen, judges and guests, let me ask you all a question. Would you prefer a strong democracy over a weak or thin one? I think I speak on behalf of everyone here when I say that a stronger government and democracy constructs a better world and society. My opponent's policy creates a, dare I say, conceptual society where all of the benefits that he lists are more up to chance rather than logic, and it actually hasn't been tested. Voter 2, my opponent claims that we think that felons are not trustworthy. We never said that. If we think that they aren't trustworthy, then we wouldn't be letting 99.99% of the felons that are currently incarcerated to vote. We are only simply stating that the people that we cannot trust are the people that have wronged society. Voter 3, my opponent's policy raises costs such as fraudulent voting, multiple arrests, and because of his policy, a normal citizen and a murderer could both be up at the ballot box. And my opponent also says that the statistics and the figures for cases such as treason are very low. Let me just remind everyone here that treason was just a sample crime. We also refer to those as high crimes, violent crimes, riots, public distress. The list could go on and on. But I think I've already made it clear that people who have committed serious crimes are definitely not to be trusted and should not be voting. And for these reasons, a vote for the con side of this debate would only be a vote for the better, a vote for a better world, a better society, and a brighter future. Thank you for listening to my debate. I'm Ryan Cheng.
All right, I have 3 minutes on the clock for our final speech of the tournament, beginning when you're ready.
Okay, judges ready? Opponents ready? I will begin my time now. Hi, my name is Henry, and today I will be providing a summary for the pro side of the resolution. Regardless of their incarceration status, Americans who have been convicted of any crime should retain the right to vote. I will first recount my contentions, then weigh my impacts, and finally give some voters. To recap, my contention 1 was flaws, subpoint A being minor crimes, subpoint B being major crimes, subpoint C being unfairness, and subpoint D being inequality. Contention 2 is the benefits of pro's policy, subpoint A being the common good, and subpoint B being better prisons. Now I will weigh our impacts. In Khan's world, we have people who are currently in prison for something as little as a parking ticket. Do you think it makes sense to take away something as big as voting rights from a person for such a small and minor offense? According to prisonpolicy.com, nearly half of people incarcerated in state prisons were convicted of nonviolent crimes, including drug, property, or public order crimes. For example, not being able to afford a parking ticket. That clearly shows how not allowing incarcerated individuals to vote is unjust and forces people who are only in prison for minor offenses to have their freedom to vote taken from them. Plus, in society, we let previously incarcerated individuals marry by get an education, own property, and drive. They don't lose their freedom of religion, the right against self-incrimination, and many other rights. But what the con side is saying is that even with all of these rights and freedoms given back to their prisoners, they still can't be trusted to help choose their leaders. If we thought criminals could never be reformed, we wouldn't have let them out of prison in the first place. Now I will explain some voters. Voter 1. My opponent has not fully defined serious crimes in their counterplan. They talk about vague topics such as violent crimes, but they did not specify what types of violent crimes. Plus, they did not provide any numbers or percentages, so I am sure that the number of violent crimes that they talk about was almost non-existent. What that means is that the voting results would be essentially the same. Voter 2. My opponent's proposed counterplan is basically the same as Pro's policy, but Pro's policy would have all the additional benefits, such as strengthening their social ties and commitment to the common good, promoting legally responsible participation in civil society, and leading to better morals in prisons and give the prisoners something to look forward to. Voter 3. My opponent has failed to realize the seriousness of the current situation. We let previously incarcerated individuals marry, own property, and work. They don't lose many freedoms, including their freedom of religion, right against self-incrimination, and many other rights. But what the con side is saying is that even with all of these rights and freedoms given back to the prisoners, they still can't be trusted to help choose their leaders. What that means is that you could accidentally park somewhere you couldn't go, you could accidentally park somewhere you couldn't, go to jail, then discover that you could not vote again for the rest of your life. That is highly unjust and unfair. And finally, voter 4. Pro has best met the judging criteria. Con has decided to go with the cross. We have provided many benefits of the current world and many costs of Con's world. So because of all of the above, that is why I strongly encourage a vote for Con. Pro, thank you for your time.
All right. And that concludes this debate. Thank you all so much. Congratulations for making it to finals. Watch your email inbox. Details on who won this round are going to be coming out within the next hour or so. Thank you to our fantastic judges. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those before you hop off the Zoom call.